Well, hello there. It's Sandy Allnock, and welcome to, I guess, the tail end of the summer of stamping, although we still have August left to go. We're just getting to the tail end of the July celebration, and I'm going to be making a card that epitomizes what my life has been like for the last couple of months, connected no matter what, over Zoom. And I made a total Zoom card, and I'm going to show you how I did it. So I got out my polychromos pencils, my Misty, some ink, and a couple of the stamp sets and some hot press watercolor paper. Works great with pencils. And the faces fit better on the big screen if you want to use them all, or you could just do one person on the little screen. And I'm just going to combine the two sets because I have them and I can, and there you go. I wanted some drinks there because, of course, this is a summer of stamping. So I laid things out so I knew which items go in the front. The water glass goes in the front. Of course, you could put whiskey in there or something, girls, if it's that kind of summer. I masked it out with some Eclipse tape and then added in the computer screen, masked that, and then added on the beverage. And then I can use the sticky note on the other side to put the plant there, but wanted to get busy working on the inside and see if this was going to work. So I divided it into the number of sections I wanted. You can put 4 people in there. You can put all 6. My 6 feel a little bit crowded on this. Everybody's got their nose pressed up against the screen on my card. So hopefully nobody actually does that on Zoom. I've had to remind myself I don't need to sit all the way up close with my nose up there. But to stamp each of the people, I just used sticky notes to make little boxes around where my pencil lines were, and then stamped each one of the people in there and arrange them. You can put cups in there with them. You can put plants in the background if there's a little bit of room. I made some of them so that they were a little off to the side. Some of them were centered. And then I got out the pencils. And this coloring looks terrible for the second. I'm going to get to the good part in this. This watercolor paper is like a drawing paper. It has that kind of a surface. So if you have some of this and you want to try it with your pencils, it works really great. Because look what happens when you take some Gamsol and a blending stump to it. It blends really beautifully, and you get really rich colors on this kind of paper because of the surface of it, which is pretty spectacular. The container that I have is just a little jar that I got. I put a cotton ball in it, and I put some of the liquid in there so that if I spill this thing, it won't go all over the place. It also means I can dip my blending stump into the little cup and just tap it on the surface of the wet cotton ball, and I don't get a goopy, wet, sploogey one, which could then leave marks on the card, etc. So that works out really nicely. For things that are transparent, this glass, I'm going to put some of the colors of the things that are behind it into the glass, but I'm going to leave some white around the outside edges. Because if you look at a glass, you'll see parts of what's behind it, but you won't see all of it. So I'm just going to, blend them out a little bit just to indicate that there's some see-throughness to it. And then color my lemonade glass in the back. Yes, I am a double drinker. I have drinks all over my studio all summer long when it's hot. I have no air conditioning. I'm just going to fess up to that right now. I do not have air conditioning. And even though I live in the Seattle area where we are starting to have in the last 10 years warmer and warmer summers, I just don't feel like it's worth it to get air conditioning at this point in my life if I can handle it. So I just have lots of fans and lots of beverages and my ice maker going crazy in the kitchen, keeping me cool. So there's that. So I have my water and I have my lemonade, and I wanted to use my blending stump again, but I didn't want to have all that yellow color on it, so I used the sharpener. The blending stumps that I'm using are the ones from Spectrum Noir as well as the Gamsol, and I like the set that they have because it's got all different sizes in it. I've got this really teeny tiny one that I can use, which is just perfect. And of course I used a little white pen to add some sheen to the glass, and then color up the buttons and the little plant. This kind of thing, you can go crazy with the scene on it, or you can keep it really simple and just color the images themselves. And you know me, I kind of overdo everything. I can't seem to do a simple card. So I started thinking while I was coloring this, like, what would the table surface look like? Because the table that I use for doing all of my Zooming and Zoom meetings and stuff is my dining room table, and it's very nondescript and stuff. And I wanted to do something fun for this computer to sit on. And I imagined sitting maybe on a picnic table or something. So I was going to color a picnic table down here on the bottom. And I'm going to do it in layers. This is something that I've done in a lot of videos where I do backgrounds with colored pencil. I've also done this in my colored pencil classes and stuff. When you work in layers with colored pencil, you can get the first layer down just messy. I'm just looking to get the color on the paper because I know I'm going to be able to solve this, especially in making wood. If you're making a light wood, it's a little harder because you need to have enough color down here to just keep adding the layers, and all of this will then blend in and go away. But I make them nice, rich, dark layers, and then I don't have to worry about it. So I can put the first layer down with all the scribbly color, do the blending stump work with it. And then this indication here, these lines, I'm using a kind of medium brown color, and I'm going to use kind of the same color to do the coloring of the boards now and add more color to it. But this is helping me to train my hand now to do these lines that are radiating out so it looks like it's got some depth to it. So the lines, if they went back into space behind the computer, they would all line up. So if you really want to take a ruler and line it all up, pick a spot out in the distance and make them all line up with that. Or you can just guess, which is what I did. And then when I did the blending stump work, I started just pulling along that same line, and it started smoothing things out. And then I'm going to take a black pencil and add in the real boards of the entire table. And at the very bottom then, since it sort of felt like I was sitting far away from the computer, which I would not be, I'm old, I have old eyes. And so I pulled myself closer to it by adding the side of the table in the very front with that dark line. And it also added more drama to it, which was nice. Now we just have to color the people. And I have a lot of people who always say, well, what colors do I color them? Well, there's a bunch of colors in the Polychromo set. There's a lot in the Prismacolor set. You can use all different kinds. I just get out all my browns, like a burnt ochre and a burnt sienna and a cinnamon and a flesh. And I just start throwing in a couple of different colors. If you use really light pressure, then you can build up a couple layers and change the color as you go. So I like to use a little bit of kind of, a couple different skin tones on different ones and bounce back and forth and add the different shades to them so that they all kind of work together. They're using the same like 4 browns, which is what I was using here. But some of them I use heavier pressure with one of the pencils, and some of them I use lighter pressure. And I'll add a little shadow here and there with some of them. Now, this image, the people are really a tiny portion of it, even though they're the focus because it's zoom and you want to get in here and see the people. But they're not, it's not like I have to make hyper-realism out of these little faces. So there's a lot of freedom here. And you could, of course, if you decide to make this card, you could color it with any medium. You can get in there with your Copics. You can go download my Human Rainbow chart that I have for Copics that has all kinds of different color combinations in it. And you could do that with them. You could watercolor them. I actually did some watercoloring in the stamp set on Monday over on my blog. So you can go check that out. I'll leave a link in the doobly-doo to that video. But there's just a ton of ways you can color these. You don't have to stick with what I'm doing here with pencil, but you can. If you're doing something like this, though, on watercolor paper, you could use the pencil on the rest of it and then do watercolor or watercolor pencil on the faces. That would be kind of interesting. Do something mixed media with this and combine different mediums, because pencil and regular color pencil and watercolor pencils and watercolor all work on hot press watercolor paper. So that would be a pretty sweet thing to try if you're interested in mixing all your mediums, or if you're even one of those people that has them all, because I love them all. I love to color with all the things. That's just how I roll. And so on Monday I did watercolor because it's World Watercolor Month. I considered doing watercolor again, but I thought I have been watercoloring so much I wanted to show people how to do some colored pencil with these as well. So once I got the faces done, I started adding colors for the hair and just kind of going around using the same colors that I've used in the rest of the card. So I didn't end up adding and introducing totally wild and crazy colors in the hair, because there's one other place that I wanted to add a little bit of color, because this just needs a little more brightness to it. And that's going to be in the backgrounds of these. So if you have been on Zoom, and anybody who's been on Zoom with me, which is probably not many of you, I don't have many YouTube followers who I Zoom with, I always have crazy backgrounds on my Zoom. I do like alien outer space backgrounds, and one day I did like a blue sky with thousands of paper airplanes flying through it. I just looked for like the craziest pictures on the internet for things that would look natural behind me, you know, the angle or whatever. And then I just show up in a meeting with a weird background behind me and just entertain everybody. It's my little treasure I give to the world. So I finished adding the color. I drew in some little lines in between each of the boxes just to define them a little bit better. And that is my card for today. I hope you enjoyed this. This is one of the watercolor cards that's over on my website. You can see that one. It's a simpler version, of course, than this next one, because I did this card too, which was outrageously crazy. It was all about quarantine hair. And if you haven't seen it, you might want to, because it's rather silly and ridiculous. Anyway, all the links are in the doobly-doo down below. I hope you continue to have a summer of stamping beyond July, and I will see you guys later. Bye-bye.